Tonight we have Chris, Gent, FPRA CPRC, and he's going to be presenting one of his award-winning past campaigns, and he's going to kind of walk you through what he did, some tips and tricks, and yeah, all that jazz.
I just put down a couple thoughts, and then I'm going to actually run through and show you the actual files on what was actually uploaded to the state so that you can see what it looks like from a structure standpoint. The thing that I just want to kind of cover, and Whitney covered some of this, but I don't know if she really delved into the fact, but this is actually a two-part awards program. So what you do at the local level and enter in Orlando, you can then turn around, 6 weeks later and submit it at the state level. And you don't have to do anything different other than pay an additional fee at the state level. So all the work that you do in setting up your stuff and your support material and everything, you're actually getting 2 for 1 on that. So that's a big advantage, being able to do, be recognized both locally and on state. I think that as much as we work hard, we're a small team. So if anything, it gives hope to those of you, if you work for small teams. I know most works for a small team. That you can have a huge resources, and then you can also have minimal resources and still achieve your objectives. So I think it's important for people to. I think a lot of people get discouraged and like, I don't have the kind of budgets that some companies have and organizations have, but that's certainly not an issue with this, and it kind of levels the playing field in that way. As Whitney said that, there's a lot of value in going through this process. And I think for me, if you file things like I file things in my office and on my computer, oftentimes, I have photos over here and I have budgets over here. And so everything's not always together. News clippings are over here. And the thing I like about going through this process is it forces me to gather all of the things that had to do with that campaign into a single file. So, and I've been at the utility almost 26 years, and I have 26 years worth of image award entries. Back before it was electronic, it was actually notebooks. So I have the physical notebooks, but I can't tell you how many times we do an event, we'll open up a new electric substation. We don't do it very often, but I can go back to the last 2 or 3 that we've opened because I know the budget. I can see pictures of what we did, the layout, because I've got the photos in there, and so it's a great historical record as well for your company, your organization. So I think it's valuable in that respect. This is a great process. If you haven't achieved your accreditation yet, your APR, this is also a great exercise to go through this because it's very similar to the testing and things that you will do as part of that process. And matter of fact, when you go before your readiness review, typically you're picking out an image award and showing that and using that as an example. So I think that's good. The other thing is I think, the process is somewhat subjective. Obviously there's rules and there's guidelines for the judges and guidelines for those of you that are submitting. Sorry, I'm allergic to pine, so, and the pine trees are all in bloom this week, so. But even that with said, it's very, the process itself is very subjective. And so, because you have all levels of experience, your judges cover a wide angle of experience and they might not understand your industry you're in. And so, you're trying to describe it as best that you can. I work in an industry, and most of us probably have either in an industry or work with one that has lots of acronyms. And it's real easy just to make an assumption and rattle that off. And I've been an Image Awards judge and Gold Image Awards judge for many, many years. And somebody dives right into it and they rattle all this stuff and it means nothing to me. So me as an evaluator and a judge, I don't understand. So just be sure when you're writing it, that you're writing it, and my best test is I either have my wife or my kids read it. Because if they read it, and there's something they don't understand, I mean, they know a little bit about the utility business, but it's very peripheral. It's not the day-to-day. So if they're like, I don't understand what you're saying here, then I know that needs to be clarified. So I think the single biggest mistake that is made is people don't follow the directions. Honestly, I mean, it's that simple. Measurable objectives, Whitney mentioned that. Measurable objectives are the number one reason why entries get disqualified. People put things, but they have put no information there on how that's going to be measured in the end. And so that's a critical part of what you're doing is you're make sure that it's clear right from the beginning. And a tip that I learned from somebody years ago, and that I always do is, when you start a project and you establish your objectives, when you go to do your write-up, you put your objectives and then I copy them and I paste them at the end in my summary. Because what I want to make sure is I'm tying back every single goal that I set, that I make sure I'm accounting for it. I can't tell you how many times somebody will go in and they'll say, these are the six objectives we have, but in the summary, they only talk about 2 of the 6. And so you get counted off because the judge is saying, hey, did you tie every goal that you set back to in the summary to show that you've achieved that? So super important to make sure that you're doing that. The support material, and I'll show some examples of one that we submitted last year. But basically, everything that you're going to reference. Everything that you're going to reference in your support material. And your support material, you got to think about everything that you're putting in there is everything that you did. If you have news releases, email newsletters, media clippings, all of that needs to be in that section. And it needs to be easy, they suggest, they don't require a table of contents, but it certainly works to your benefit. The judges, on average, I would say, physically touch your entry. I would say the maximum is probably 12 to 15 minutes, honestly, because the judges are assigned a large quantity of entries. And so they'll read it. Your summary, your 2-page summary is 70% of your score. So your 2-page summary is, so much attention needs to be paid to that. But that being said, the 30% is pretty significant as well. So the 30% is for your support material. And so you want to make sure that if you're referencing, we did a survey in the write-up, that you need to have that survey, a copy of that survey results in the summary. Because that's another big mistake, is that people say, well, we did this, we did market research, we did this, we did an employee survey, or even photos. To me, photos, if you're going to say, our goal was to have 200, key opinion leaders come to this groundbreaking or whatever, and then you get to and there's not a single picture. So I'm taking your word for it, but it would be nice to see, a couple of snapshots of like that you actually did all the stuff you said you did. So, as you're telling that story, make sure that each time as you're writing your narrative in that 2-page summary that you're like, okay, I just mentioned that I had a survey. I got to make sure I pull that in. I've got photos. I've got a timeline that I created for the project. Things like that you want to make sure. I think, it's hard, 2-page summary. I hear it time and time again, trying to consolidate everything that you do for a particular program. Sometimes it's easy because if you're just, if you launched a website or something, it might be easier to do. But if you're talking about a huge year-long fundraising campaign or something, and you got to put everything you did into 2 pages, is really difficult. So, you want to be concise. But those judges, like I said, I would, and just based on my experience, I would say 12 to 15 minutes is about the amount of time. They'll spend about half that time reviewing you know, because it takes you probably, I don't know, 6 to 8 minutes to read the 2 pages, and then you're leafing through all the PDF that you're attaching. So that's really important. Research, that question gets asked a lot is, you know, we can't afford research, or even better, we didn't do research, because sometimes we do jobs because our bosses tell us to do jobs. And we've probably all been in their situation where they're just like, we just need to do this, and you never have the time to actually go and do research of your audiences or whatever. So it's okay to explain that. We've had numerous times where something maybe happened in our community, or our board just decided, hey, we want to do this. And we did it, and you know, and we executed it well, but our starting point wasn't, you know, ideal. And it's okay to explain that, because that's real life, and people, the judges certainly understand that. You know, the objectives have to, and I talked about this again, about clearly stated and measurable. I write that more every year than any other single comment on entries. So that's super important. When, you know, I told you 70% of the score is for the 2-page written summary, but 30% of that 70% is on your implementation. And so that's super important that when you're giving your narrative on what you did, that you provide a lot of detail there, because that's really where the meat of your entry should be, is in implementation. You know, you set your goals, but really get into the meat of, you know, did you contract with people? Did you make phone calls? Did you schedule meetings? Did you do any of that kind of stuff? So that's really important as well. Yeah, so one of the things that I've seen a lot too is to see a lot of times people, like in their evaluation, you want to make sure that it's something that's like, you know, meaty. For example, and I wrote this comment down that I've seen a lot is, you know, we did this video and we showed it at the employee meeting and the boss loved it. And that's their evaluation. Okay. You know, and that might be great to say at a conversation with someone in the hallway and say, you know, oh yeah, that was a great video. But that doesn't, you know, you had a goal in the beginning. Are you trying to change an attitude? Are you trying to get people to sign up to do something or educate? And so just saying people loved it is not going to swing it. And that's a comment. I would say in the top 5, that's repeated in the evaluations, as people say, oh yeah, they loved it. The employees had a great time, but they don't really get back to the meat of the goals. So that's really another important aspect of it. Budgets. I'll touch quickly on the budgets, but it's important to document the budget. And I would say this is maybe number 3 most common error is the budget. Don't forget to include staff time. You must, it's a requirement of the entry, and we disqualify entries all the time because they don't. You have to, and you know, they're sensitive to the fact that if you're in an agency and you're working for clients that you don't have to do that. But you do need to know, or you need to share with the judges on what kind of dollars that you're dealing with. I mean, you have your hard costs, but those, you can do a blended rate of all the people that were involved in the project without getting into specific salaries and agency costs and things like that.
Question.
Yes.
Because for the project that I submitted, I mean, I didn't have a budget, it was $0. And what am I gonna submit? Just,
But how many hours do you commit to executing it?
okay.
Planning and executing. So if you could say, oh, yeah, I spent 50 hours on that, well, you have an hourly cost.
Mm-hmm.
And so your hourly cost times those hours is what you would put in as staff time.
Okay.
So-
I'm trying to think of a way without mentioning like salary or, like you were saying.
Right. I mean, where we've run into issues in the past and why that was added is because oftentimes it didn't really tell the whole story. You might mention the team that you might see, you know, and we'll talk about that. You know, Whitney talked about the people in your organization, in your PR team, but that might not be all the people. You might have had people across the whole company that worked on this project. And so, all you have to do is put a total dollar amount. I mean, whether you had 23 people or 2 people, and so it kind of eliminates the need, you won't be sharing salaries at all,
Yeah.
you know? Well, I guess if it's just you, then there's a possibility there.
To piggyback on his question, like if you're, like for me, I own my own small company,
Okay.
and I charge the client a specific amount
Mhm.
to do that, right? But, you know, it's for me to make sure that I do a good job, there's like endless hours.
Mhm.
So and I have a hourly rate, but doesn't necessarily go with what I charge the client. So how would you make sure you include that in there? Because, you know, I wanna make sure that this goes out, I pitch all day.
I mean, nobody's,
You know what I mean? Like, so how would you put that in?
yeah, I mean, I guess it just depends on if your summary got out somewhere. I mean, like they put winning summaries on the website, but they're protected. You just can't Google search and find out what these entries, budgets are. So, if you want to put your costs, because really, I mean, if what you choose to mark it up is your own thing, but I would think that what they're asking for is what was the cost of the staff time, your cost, a company's cost.
Okay.
So I don't know if I would include the markup because that's not your cost.
Does it have to be dollar, or can I just say hours?
No, I think it's reflected in the total dollar amount.
We've done hours before, so last year we submitted Molly and Rice, we just did hours, and because our, like, all stuff.
Let me just look real quick, but I'm pretty sure that
We actually ran into that this year, because we had a few people that were like, hey, my company's like, we're not allowed to share our budget numbers because competitors and whatnot, so.
So what do they do? Because I know we've disqualified them in Orlando.
There's actually a new, I wish I could pull up the rubric, there's something about like, if they can't include, maybe they can include a percentage of their annual budget, like Halloween Horror Nights
We did like.
absorbs, Halloween Horror Night, we absorb 25% of our entire annual budget towards Halloween Horror Nights.
And that was a winning entry?
Mm-hmm. It's
So
just
let me
really
just-
tough for especially some of these big corporations, like they won't share their budget.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's understandable, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have the USB with, hours on it, I don't know how we submitted, like, the budget and then the hours.
I just want to see what I'm just looking at the.
Because we actually ran into that issue when because Allison sat on our committee to create the new judging rubric, and we had that same thing, that same question come up.
Let's see.
Because that didn't change this year, right, Whitney?
No.
A little bit. The question that the judge will be asked is a little different. Are you pulling up the rubric?
Okay, well, we'll get that answer, but I'm pretty, I can't remember the exact wording that they used for that. Okay, well, we'll find that.
So last year, one of my entries was a video series, this media channel that we created. And we didn't, I partnered with another guy to create it. It wasn't like a client that paid us to do this, we started it on our own and we were doing it ourselves. He was a videographer and I was doing all the content and the hosting and everything. And so, but in my budget section, I said, in my regular business, I would charge someone $100 an hour, and I was spending 3 hours a week pulling together content, 1 hour a week filming, blah, blah, and he usually charges people X amount of dollars per video or whatever.
Yeah.
So, because we weren't really we were just creating something on our own, so it's
Gotcha.
kind of interesting.
Just to, I guess, tack on another question with that, if you're doing something, let's say for a nonprofit, and you have a regular agency rate, but you charge them less because they're nonprofit, do you mention that it might cost more for a for-profit business versus nonprofit client?
So I actually didn't position mine like that at all. One of my other entry was for a nonprofit that was my client. What I did was, like, what they paid me wasn't what I listed. What I listed was, what money did I spend to make stuff happen for them? You know what I mean? Because they paid me for my time. I just, like, kept that wasn't even, I didn't even include that in the entry. I just included, here's what we spent on executing the campaign, here's what it cost.
That makes sense.
Same thing for the other thing I was just talking about, the video, like, technically it didn't cost us anything besides me giving my time to, you know what I mean? So, but yeah, I just left that out. I just put it like, they had no budget, none. And the only time I said, actually I said, there was no budget, but they paid for my time, and, you know, the press release creation and distribution took approximately 3 hours, at what my hourly rate would be $100 an hour, but every other portion of the execution
So it's
cost them nothing.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So that was a change as well. So you can, you know, either submit it as total dollars or a percentage of your total budget. But you do have to then provide your total budget.
Yeah.
But that way people can see, like, wow, this took up, you know, this one campaign took up 30% of your entire annual budget, like,
Yeah.
you know. Whether your budget's big or small, that's still
Still.
speaking.
Right. So, but anyway, I think that, you know, anything, you know, just kind of sum up in terms of kind of the lessons learned for this is to, I found that, you know, obviously we're only a couple weeks away from the entry deadline for this chapter, but one of the things that I've learned over time is once you start doing these, so if you haven't done them before, once you start doing them, it makes you think differently and you file differently. So it makes it a lot easier than, because I know the first time I did, I'm like scrambling trying to find all the stuff to support the thing, support the entry. So over time, you realize that as you do things, let's dump this into the file or into a folder that we set up ahead of time to keep records of that. So what I want to do here is just, ooh, this is a funky color. Well, it's not.
It's not showing
Huh?
It's not letting me minimize it.
Yeah, it's not. I don't know what it's doing.
Oh, maybe you have to slide the mouse all the way up to the top of the screen? Left-hand side.
Oh.
The red little screen is in.
Yeah, but it doesn't have my, oh, maybe it's in here. Okay. So as when you actually go in and enter, there's 5 things, potentially 6, depending on what category, but there's 5 things that you're going to be uploading. Okay, so I just want to show you what examples of what we submitted last year at both the local and at the state level. So the first is you're required to put, so the first thing is you have to do an organizational overview, and Whitney talked about that, okay? But we explain, for our example, I mean, we're a utility company, we're a power company. So this is what we do. We're a not-for-profit organization, and we have our communications department of 2. And that's important for the judges to determine, okay, what size team do you have working there? So you can see it's just very simple. We included the names on this, but sometimes we don't. It just depends on what we're doing. But so that's short. That's the whole thing right there. It's just and just kind of a synopsis of the role of our department in the utility. So every entry is required to have that. So that's your organizational overview. So the next thing that we entered is you have to submit your 50-word summary. Yeah, let me see if I can figure out which one of these is that. Okay, so 50-word summary, and I found it's very helpful because sometimes this stuff gets separated, from now that it's online, but it's nice to somehow identify, just don't have a summary with nothing else on it so they can track it back. The purpose of the 50-word summary is strictly for the script for the award show at the local level and at the state level. So they take that information and that just dropped into the script for the event. So, but this is important. Don't just like go over this quick because now you've got an audience, golden image at the state level. What do we have, 300 people in the room? I mean, it's packed. And so, so almost everybody in that room is not going to have a clue. Now, I mean, Halloween Horror Nights, a lot of us know about Halloween Horror Nights. You don't have to be even in the Orlando chapter to know what that is. But when I'm talking about doing an electrical safety calendar for kids, nobody's going to know. So we explain it so that anybody just walking by, or I always call it my elevator speech. So if somebody wanted, hey, give me a 1-minute summary of what you did. But that, just so you know, that's used specifically for the script.
With that,
Mhm.
I noticed it wasn't, like it didn't go toward your goal or like, it's just like
Yeah.
a problem statement and
Right.
what you did, just leave it that
Right.
simple.
Yeah. I mean, it's just something because everybody in the room knows that you went through all the steps, or you wouldn't be going up front to get something. So, you had the goals and you implemented and you recapped it at the end and included your budget and all that stuff. But that's important too. Then you're required to put a JPEG, and the rules say don't put a logo. I mean, solely a logo, okay? Because this is, again, just for the award show. So when it comes time to you to go up on stage and collect something, you want to put something that shows people, and I see so many times where people just, they'll put a logo or they'll just put one graphic or something. It doesn't really give you a sense of a feel. If you're doing an event, then your picture should probably be a picture of the event. That's the main thing that your goal was, is to produce an event. So, in creating these, I always try and get a summary of what it looked like, so people get a sense that, oh, it's kids, it's art, it's conservation and safety. And so anyway, so that's required, again, for all entries. Then you have your 2-page, oh no, that's the support. Let me close that out. I'll do that last. Is this it? Yes. So this is the 70% of your score. So, and you can see, your I think it's 5 subcategories. So you have your research and analysis, statement of objectives, implementation, evaluation, and budget. Okay, so one of the things that I've learned from somebody else, and I now do myself, is I underline key points. Key objectives, things that we learned, things that I want to call attention to. And it actually, I find more and more people are using this now, and it's super helpful because when you're kind of like reading it, and it pulls out that most important information. So again, so I went through this, we did our research and found out, we know that electricity is the leading cause of death for children in the United States. And so, contact with electricity. So as a utility, obviously safety is a chief concern. So we did both a, kind of our secondary research online. We did primary research because we do an annual customer satisfaction survey of our customers, and we ask them what issues are most important to them. So we're getting feedback from them. So after that, we identify our target audience. Obviously, we're trying to, the research shows that if we deliver safety messages at the elementary school age, and this isn't just about electricity, but that's the most, you impact their whole lifetime by what they learn in the elementary school age. So that's our whole philosophy, is we're going to give these key safety messages when they're elementary school, so that by the time that they're adults, they become regular practice. So I had 5 objectives for this. So you can see, let's see how we measure them. Okay, we want to raise awareness of electrical safety among grade school students by the production of a calendar. So obviously you either did it or you didn't. Second, incorporate the calendar with easy to follow safety tips and reminders. Increase by 10% the number of entries over our last year's contest. Develop 2 unique contest hooks to encourage additional entries and gain additional contest exposure, and to keep the cost per calendar at a budgeted amount of $2 each. So that's what, so any of those I can tie back. So let me quickly run down here to the evaluation. So the only goal we didn't meet, contest participation dropped by 38%. And it was an interesting case study because we had a lot of things going on. It was a change in the FCAT, and so that affected number of entries. That obviously put a dent into the number of entries that we received. So, but we did the research to find out. So we actually contacted the teachers afterwards to find out, hey, why was that? Why didn't we make our goal? So we did some tweaking. We expanded the deadline for this year's calendar to increase the number of entries and things. But all of those things, contest participation, the calendar was printed and delivered. We did primary research 2 weeks after to make sure 100% of the schools had them in their classrooms. So it was a daily reminder of safety. So 4 of our 5 were met with the calendar of safety. And then we put the budget. So, put the cost of the calendars, graphic design. I broke it down, advertising. We give out prize money to all the winners. So all of that, you get a total cost, which breaks down to $1.09 per calendar, which was 46% below our goal. So you can see the staff time. We spend quite a bit of, it's 75 hours with 2 people. So that's how we showed that. So any questions about the 2-page summary? And so in the implementation here, I just kind of went through, this is what we did. It was kind of almost bulleted. We developed the electronic entry form. We distributed the stuff to the media to get promotion of the contest, distribution of the calendars. So anyway, it was, even though, and that's one thing I think that's important to remember is, you set your objectives. It's kind of like in science when you used to set your what would they call that? Hypothesis. So you go what you think might happen, but it may not happen. And the same thing with your goals. You might say, we're going to raise this much money, we're going to do an event, we're going to have this many people come, and that may not be the case. So it's okay to do that and explain why it might not have worked out.
I have a question.
Yes.
As far as goals, so I had a situation where, we were expecting X amount of dollars based on ticket sales at $20. And halfway through, we realized we can raise it, and we can raise that cost too and make a little bit more. Mm-hmm. Do I keep that goal the same, or do I adjust the goal to like the new figure? Since we
say that I missed the first part.
It feels like we kind of changed the goal in between. So we had, our goal was X amount of dollars based on, 100 ticket sales at $20 a piece. And as we worked on this project, we realized, okay, we can raise the ticket sale price. It's like an ongoing event. We can raise the ticket sale price and we know we'll get it. So then it's kind of like our goal changed a bit from there because we knew we were going to exceed what we had already established as our original goal. So which, I guess when we put this updated goal in there as well as the original.
So was it solely just to raise more money?
Well, no, I mean, that's one
Okay.
of the goals.
Had you already announced the pricing and then changed it midway?
Yes, it was a series of events.
Okay.
So it was $20 for the first, 25 for the next, 35 for the next kind of
Okay.
situation.
Oh,
I'm
was it
sorry, I
each
guess I didn't
time?
objective.
Well, I mean, I think your justification, did you have additional expenses or something?
No, we just,
Oh.
we just
Okay.
knew we could get more.
Well, I mean,
Opportunity.
Yes, we saw an opportunity.
but I mean, it was still a strategy. At some point, you made a decision to see what the market would bear, right?
Right, and, well, it's.
I don't think that's a negative thing. I think
We
I mean,
exceeded the goal,
theme
but.
parks raise prices,
All the time.
not to single out any one
Calling
theme
me
park.
out.
No, I'm just saying, but I mean, there's, everything is, they kind of set a market price to see what people are willing to pay. I mean, that's with food and, I mean,
And it could be that, like, our vendors changed at one point, so if we had catering, then we chose one caterer for this event, one for the next, and that price changed a little bit, so it's really to kind of increase our margins a little bit. But our goal, like, once we knew that we were gonna raise those prices, our old goal was, of course, we're gonna meet it because we've now exceeded.
well, I mean, your real cost, when you detail your budget, is what you spent.
Right, I guess I'm speaking more on the objective side.
Are you gonna have, you were wanting to raise a certain target. I would still have it as what you set out originally, but I would explain in the implementation that as you got into it, because of variables that you weren't 100% sure, you went ahead and ratcheted that price up. I wouldn't try and cover that up. I think that's
Right.
important, because, I mean, there was a strategy to that. I think we all get into things and like, oh, well, this isn't gonna be what I thought it was gonna be. And that's why I'm like, when you go through this process, don't be afraid of, saying, hey, we were trying something, or it was new, first time we tried it, or, people are, I mean, people understand that we're all constantly experimenting to see.
Yeah, and I was thinking I could go about it as far as that, we were implementing and evaluating as we were doing it
Right.
to then optimize.
Yeah, but I would definitely keep your objective in the beginning is what you set out
Okay.
to do, not what you ended up at.
Okay.
And then the last part, how are we on time?
Oh, you're good.
Okay. Which one is the summary? So this is the summary. Remember, this is 30% of your total score. So if you look at it, I've got it broken down here into table of contents so that it was a quick scan. But so I have the entire calendar. I just put the PDF of the calendar in there so that the judges could see the artwork and they could see all the safety tips. Again, everything that I mentioned in the summary, I wanted to make sure that I covered in that. So let me keep going.
Good artist.
Yeah. The winner of the contest every year we wrap one of our utility vehicles with their art.
Oh, that's so awesome.
So it drives around for a year.
How neat.
So then we've got our our timeline for the whole project there identified. This is the call for entries that were sent to the schools. This is just some of our, showing mailing lists and things. Our judging form, we have correspondence scheduled through the contest with the art teachers. So, we include all the correspondence that we had in different forms. Then we, news releases, we have the news releases there, and then we include all the media clippings. And so whether there were print, or, like this is a social promotion of the calendar. So, and we captured, there's a group of the winners, and we recognized them at our board meeting. But see, like what I'm saying is, I could say in there, hey, we recognize the kids at the board meeting. But what it shows is, we had these plaques made for the kids, so their artwork is framed, and they got their name, and, I mean, they're published artists, so we really try to make a big deal about that. And then, we have a summary of our budget that we set at the beginning of the project. So, so that's what it's just kind of a combination of all the stuff that you need to support everything that you're writing. So again, 30% of your total score is, so you do need to, make sure that you're covering everything that you're saying in the summary. So, and that's kind of what I came to show you. I'm happy to answer any questions. I know you have to go to dinner.
I had some dinner. Thank you, Chris.
Sure. Anybody have any?
Ask a question.
Are you, if I shot you an email, are you able to share that, or is there someone way to do this, just so I can, like, when I do mine, I can, like, compare, like?
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Okay.
And again, there's no, let me tab up to I'm not a Mac person. How do I get to the top of the PDF?
Use two fingers.
There's a scroll bar on the right-hand side,
There you
so
go.
whenever you scroll.
Beautiful. I knew it had to be easy if it was an Apple product.
Yeah.
Got their phones mastered, I just don't. So, I mean, you can see, and as we were writing the 2-page summary, every time that I mentioned something in the 2-page summary, I went over and made sure we had it on the table of contents, and then we built the table of contents as we were writing the summary, and then we went and backfilled all that stuff.
So you would suggest a table of contents for, let's say, we're just writing a press release, we're just submitting a press release.
Mhm.
I mean, this is obviously for a whole campaign,
Right.
but like if you're submitting something on a smaller scale, like what does that look like?
Well, no, this wasn't a campaign, this is just a printed tool.
So,
This
yeah.
is just for the poster calendar.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
Well, if
so,
I can interject there, the judging rubric, the new one actually gives you points specifically for a table of contents.
okay, okay.
And as a judge, every judge is gonna have a complete different thing. Somebody might really be interested in the research. So they wanna tab through, and they don't care about social media posts, So they're gonna really focus in on the questions you asked and the results, and that might be interesting. Somebody else might really love the social stuff. They wanna see what kind of reach you had and, what kind of engagement you had, so. But it really, once you see it, I always find that it's beneficial to physically see it, because you read something, you're like, you need a JPEG graphic of this and this that explains the campaign, but then you see it, and you're like, oh, that's what it is. So, yeah, so I'm happy to share whatever.
Could we look quickly too at your
Sure.
media coverage? Because one thing that always is a little bit of a challenge is how to track that. And of course, things get broadcast multiple times throughout the day, so you've got to make sure you're calculating that total reach, but
Right.
then as far as the supplemental materials, finding that balance of what to actually include. So I'd be interested to see kind of how you frame your media coverage. Because I'm guessing you don't have a system, right, like critical mention or anything.
No, we do on the broadcast side with TVIs.
TVIs is where you pull, okay.
And they, the nice thing about TVIs is, they give you the viewership for that particular broadcast and everything.
The problem,
Go
I was
ahead.
gonna say real quick, with, we use Cision, and after like 3 or 4 months, they've gone.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I was gonna,
TVIs is the same way.
It's like 30 days
Yeah.
for TI, so that's why you gotta really save it throughout the year, or
Yeah.
you get turn it up later.
okay.
And I've tried to go back when doing these entries, and I'm like, oh, I didn't ever pull that
But
off.
the way you can offset that is if you have some data, you can provide what you do have and indicate it's a measure of what you did capture, and that there were additional, it was a minimum number of, you reached at least 1.5 million, or however you wanna characterize it.
And sometimes, we won one year in the news release category, because we did an education campaign. We had a family, every year, the single biggest day of the year for power outages is Valentine's Day, because people release balloons. And so we had people that went at our local cemetery, everybody, all the family members who've lost loved ones come and they put Valentine's balloons. Well, if you get wind that blows through like today, all that stuff's up in our lines, and so and it causes thousands of people to not have power, and so we did a whole education campaign, and it was to communicate to our customers. That was the whole point of that. But it got picked up in the LA Times, and I mean, it was like, because it was just this bizarre, because the balloon went up, caught fire, came down, caught the cemetery on fire, the grass around the graves, and it was this whole thing. But it was an interesting story, but really our goal wasn't media coverage. Our goal was to educate our local customers, hey, if you're gonna buy balloons, don't leave them at the cemetery. So sometimes, your media coverage might not even be one of your objectives, because ours was finding every way we could to reach our customers in the local market, but it turned into a much bigger story. Any other questions?
I'm new to the area, Orlando, but even from like where I was in Cape Coral, Miami, a lot of my clients are in other states. Like one of my biggest clients is in Michigan, another one's in Arizona, and another one's in Texas. A lot of the stuff that you mentioned is like local Florida. Do the campaigns have to be?
No, not at all. No, and the entries, I think Whitney touched on that, but I mean, we have people, because we have chapters all over the state, but sometimes a lot of the campaign work you'll hear is actually done in Tallahassee. And so they have a lot of legislature kind of based entries, but sometimes the PR firms who did the work, even though Tallahassee was their target, they entered in Jacksonville or they entered in Orlando or whatever, because that's where the agency was based. Right. So, it doesn't matter. And matter of fact, I think it's interesting because we have a number of at-large members at FPRA that are members of that live in other states and do work. And so we've seen that through the years of entries from that describe stuff in other. So it's a great, and when you get an opportunity, when you get accredited and to be a judge, because you learn a lot by being a judge. You become a better professional in terms of entering, because you see the pitfalls and easy pitfalls. I mean, and let me say, I mean, we've worked hard and we've entered a lot, but it's like you throw enough mud at the wall, something's going to stick. I mean, we've walked away with a lot less than we entered. I mean, we've won some, but every one of those is a learning. And to me, it's disappointing, I guess, that you spend the time to put it in. But in the end, to me, the value is we did the project, and here's the historical, look at what we did. And next time we could do it better, and we learn ways to do better. But going through the process of submitting an entry, there's a lot of value to it, beyond just the award.
Can you request feedback?
You will get feedback. Yes. And they've really kind of cracked down, haven't they? They really cracked down. It used to be handwritten, and the judge would say, good or whatever, or they'd even worse is they'd score you low, and then they gave you no explanation. But now you have to. Yes. You
Rubric too, like if they give you a good on something, you can look at the definition and see what good says.
Right.
And compare it to outstanding. You know what I mean? And be like, oh, well, outstanding means that the goal was very clearly defined and concise. That, you know what I mean? It'll obviously it'll show you kind of what you're missing.
So, but it's and that's, I mean, it's a lot of work. Actually, I find that I'm more, when it used to be handwritten and we would go through those, I would write, and but after a while, I mean, I think in general we don't write a lot as much as we used to. I mean, once you kind of get out of school, well, even in school now, I think so much is done on the computer. But as a judge doing all the scoring, I'm a lot more comfortable just writing all my comments, typing. So I find I'm giving a lot more feedback than I used to when it was handwritten. But yes, and the people you have, accredited, certified PR professionals from the state reviewing your work. So, it's kind of a bonus, because a lot of times people pay for that kind of thing. You want to evaluate the job you're doing. It's a perfect opportunity to somebody to, they can tell you how you're doing on your planning side, your implementation side, maybe better ways to budget, so.
Are all the judges APR, CPRC?
Yeah, I believe so, or they have
They at
one.
least have to be an APR.
Oh.
Or actually, if there is a chapter that doesn't have enough APRs, if you've won an image award before, you can judge.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I think every single judge, right now everyone's submitting their judges to me, every single judge is at least an APR.
So they have experience with the process.
Volunteer basis?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah. Paid judge.
Yeah.
I'm looking at my
That could
APR
open
tomorrow.
up a-
Yeah, I'm like, I'm trying to figure out a way to say thank you. You come to conference, we'll buy you a cocktail.
Well, I hope you all found that helpful, and, you know, please feel free to, you know, I didn't even bring out my case with my cards in it, but I'm easy to find online. But I'm happy to, if you have additional questions that you want to ask offline, please don't hesitate to reach out, and I'd be happy to. And you have a whole, that's the great thing about this process is both at the local level and the state level, you have people that this is their job this year, is to ensure your success in entering, and they're providing you with the resources and the tools. And even if you go through all this and you decide to not enter, come to the Image Awards banquet and see and hear, you know, the projects described, and because that you'll find a lot of value in that as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.